Welcome to the Empowered Wife podcast, where it's all about fixing your relationship without your man's conscious effort so that you can feel desired and taken care of and special, even if your relationship feels completely hopeless. I'm Laura Doyle, and today I'm talking about how to stop compromising and what to do instead. My guest Brittany's marriage felt beyond repair because of infidelity on both parts and a separation. He was so cold and hurtful to her that she wasn't convinced there was anything to save. But today, she says, her marriage is better than ever and that her husband is continuously telling her sweet things and telling her how amazing she is. They are truly happy and close. She's going to tell us how she did that. Then I'll be giving out the Worst Relationship Advice of the Week award, which one of my students got from her coworker when she shared her hopes and fears about her marriage with him. You don't want to be like this student's coworker. All that is coming up. But first, let's talk about how to stop compromising and what to do instead. Some friends of mine couldn't agree about the color for the kitchen cabinets. He wanted white cabinets and she wanted dark cabinets. So they compromised and got gray cabinets. And then nobody was happy. And isn't that just the way with compromising? Sometimes it seems like nobody gets what they want. It's lose-lose instead of win-win. Everybody says you have to compromise to get along in marriage, but I haven't compromised in my marriage for over 2 decades. Neither has my husband, and we get along pretty darn well. How is that possible? Well, because we stick to our strengths. I'm focused on my feelings and desires, which is the seat of feminine power. And he's focused on what he thinks is best. Therefore, it's impossible to have a conflict where one of us is wrong and one is right because we're not even in the same realm. A while ago, I wanted to throw out an old landline phone because it was making crackling noises. But he thought we should keep it because that phone is the partner of the other phone that works great. And they're part of the same system. After he told me his thinking, I wanted to keep the crackly phone too. In other words, his thinking influenced me, and then my desire changed. We didn't come to a compromise because we didn't need one. We both stuck to our areas of strength and came to agreement. Sure, I was the one who was influenced this time, but sometimes my desires influence his thinking, and we reach agreement that way. One of my coaches shared a great example that came up when she expressed a desire for French doors in her office. Her husband was going to install the doors, but he realized the heating vent and baseboard would have to be moved to accommodate the double French doors she wanted. So he came up with a plan to just put a single French door in her office, and he presented it to her over lunch, including a drawing he'd made, and he'd clearly given it a lot of thought. Now, when he presented the challenge and told her how much extra work was involved, at first she felt like she should probably just accept the single French door, even though she really wanted 2 doors. But instead, she listened respectfully to him, explained the challenge, and then she was quiet for a moment after he was done presenting his idea. She let him know she had been listening, both with that pause and by saying, "I hear you." That magical listening phrase, "I hear you." And then she asked herself what she wanted, and the answer was double French doors. So she said, "I would really love double French doors." She was a little nervous that it would upset her husband to express her desires after he had just told her what he thought about how much extra work it was. But to her relief, it didn't upset him at all. He said, "Okay." And he set about to be her hero by making it so. He even pulled off a minor miracle by finding the doors at a lumber yard when he was driving by in the middle of the pandemic when it was hard to get materials quickly. He very happily installed them, including doing the extra work to move the vent and the baseboard. And she was naturally grateful and expressed her joy and appreciation. So it was a win-win. She reflected on how she used to think that to be a respectful wife meant she had to agree with her husband. But she now knows she would have shortchanged them both if she had not stuck with honoring her desire for double French doors. Her husband knew she had listened to his thinking and respected it. And she wanted French doors, double French doors. Not but she wanted double French doors, and she wanted double French doors. See the difference? Her desires didn't trample his thinking. They didn't even conflict. They just coexisted. And her desire colored his thinking. And that beats compromising any day of the week. If you're wondering how to get started with fixing your relationship and making it shiny again, then you need a roadmap. Get 6 simple steps to follow that will set your relationship up for success. Discover 3 common mistakes that wives make trying to fix their relationship that just make things worse when you download my free Adored Wife Roadmap. You can do that at getcherished.com. Go to getcherished.com now to get your roadmap in minutes. My guest Brittany's marriage felt beyond repair because of infidelity on both parts and a separation. He was so cold and hurtful to her that she wasn't convinced there was anything to save. But today, she says her marriage is better than ever and that her husband is continuously telling her sweet things and how amazing she is. They are truly happy and close. And she's going to tell us how she did that. Brittany, welcome to the Empowered Wife podcast. Thanks for being on the show.
Hi, Laura. Thank you so much for allowing me to come onto your show.
So tell us what it was like in the bad old days.
Oh, well, I was a super controlling freak. It was really bad to the point that my husband couldn't do anything without me. If I wasn't involved in what he was doing, he couldn't go with all his friends. He couldn't go out with family. He couldn't do anything if it was without me. He dealt with it. Of course, things angered him and we got into a lot of arguments about it, which I don't blame him now. But back then I was really upset because I felt like he just didn't want to be with me. He was at work all day. You know, why don't you want to be with me when you spend all this time with your coworkers? And it was really bad. I begged and cried at him a lot to not leave. His brother, he invited him out to the strip. And I told my husband no. I told him he wasn't allowed to go, that I wouldn't allow him to. And I cried, and our son at the time was 2 months old. So my husband agreed. He didn't go, but I felt like he held on to that resentment for a while. I want to say about 4 years into the relationship of me just continuously doing this, he told me that I was suffocating him, that I'm getting to a point where it's too much. Like, he's like, I love you and I want to be with you, but this is becoming to a point where I don't even have my own life. You don't have your own life, and it's not fair. And if it doesn't stop, I don't know if I can do this. I kept going. Yeah, I kept going. I kept doing the same thing. Of course, at that time I cried and I was like, I'm sorry. I'll stop. I didn't know what else to do besides control and be crazy. It went on for a few more years. And then, that's when he finally came home from work one day. He came home, and I'll never forget this conversation, but we were sitting on our bed and he looked at me and he just started crying. And he's like, I love you, but I can't do this anymore. I can't. You're a better woman today than you were the day that I got with you. He goes, but you're controlling, your manipulativeness, you're lying, stuff like that. He goes, I cannot take it. He goes, I'm done. So, of course, it was really bad. So I cried and I tried pleading him back, and he's like, no, like, we're done. No. So we stayed living together throughout the entire time. He never actually left home up until a little bit later, which I'll get to. But I didn't find out about his infidelity until, I want to say, about 2 weeks into our separation. I actually found out through a coworker of mine that was friends with the girl that was supposed to be my best friend. Oh. She was sleeping with my husband. So yeah, it was really bad during that time. So I confronted him and I told him that I knew. And at the time, luckily, my friend Carly, she knew about your book and she was practicing your skills for years. So I got really close with her and I asked her, what about these skills? How do you go about this? Like, I want my marriage. I don't want it destroyed. Um, so she gave me the book and I started practicing the skills. Well, when I did confront him, instead of coming at him like crazy, I came at him and I was like, look, I know what you're doing and it's okay, but it's not okay. I love you and I want us. I'm not going to stop fighting for us until you're back with me. He didn't write me back. Of course, he didn't write me back, but I can say 2 weeks prior to that, me finding out and me confronting him, he didn't come home till 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, sometimes not at all. Well, that night he ended up coming home at 12, which for me was a victory. It was a victory. So I left it at that, but he was so cold, like to me, no matter what, like anytime he would look at me, it was like daggers in his eyes. Like he hated me and I couldn't take it. So I got to the point where I felt like the skills were working. I was like, there's improvements that I've seen where he came home early, like if I say, I'm sorry that I was so disrespectful, that he seemed to turn a different page and be a little bit kinder. But somehow, some way in my head, I still wanted vengeance.
Yes.
So
you're a mortal woman, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So, and I went out and I cheated on him with multiple people. It wasn't just one. I never felt any better. I regret it. It kind of made myself feel a lot worse and my self-worth. And it was like I went from feeling okay about myself and everything that was going on, even prior to the infidelity, to this person where I just felt so low. Like I felt like I was the worst person on earth to do that to him, what he was doing to me. So I talked more to my friend Carly, and she just told me, stick to the book. I promise you, stick to the book. You will not regret it. You'll have this amazing relationship that you just won't ever regret. So I did. And I stuck to the book. My husband and I started joking a little bit more. He started asking me out to like lunches, or, we went out to sushi together. So it was like these little improvements started happening once I stopped my infidelities as well. And I just started practicing the book. I started really sticking down to it. Well, Thanksgiving came around and my husband and I, my kids actually left with our mother-in-law and went to another family's house. So my husband and I got to spend the weekend alone, which was amazing. It was very fantastic. The only downfall to that weekend was I never deleted the text messages that I had from my infidelities, and my husband never knew about them. He had no idea that I had cheated on him, none whatsoever. So I gave him the passcode to my phone because, things are improving. We're getting better. I wasn't thinking about it. So I gave him the passcode to my phone, and he went through every single text message. He found out everything. And from that point, it went from we're doing a lot better to a major outburst. My husband actually left the state. He told me he was done with me. There was nothing to repair, that I was useless, that I was just a piece of crap. It was very, very bad. But I, again, stuck with my friend Carly, and I talked to her about my being scared. And I was like, should I just go back to what I was doing? And she's, no, stick to the book. Your husband loves you. Your husband wants you. He wants nothing more. Because he's getting so angry means that he still cares. That's it. I can say she's she's my best friend now. I love her to death. She kept me on track. Um, so I stuck to the book. I stuck with, my husband would write me mean things like he was going to take the kids away from me. I texted him back, whatever you think.
That must have been
Yeah,
scary.
it was very hard because I was scared of him taking my kids from me because I love my kids.
Sure.
But he didn't, and then he texted me probably about a week into being gone, almost a week. He texted me and he said, I'm really sorry for all the mean things that I've said. I really miss you and our kids, and I want to come home. So at the time we were struggling for money. We kind of still are, but it's getting a little bit better. So we were struggling for money. So I actually borrowed money from a friend to go out and go get him and bring him home. And yeah, that was amazing victory. And then
Yes.
it's been a battle ever since. But I can say, as long as I use the skills and I don't fall off track, it's perfect. Like, he's very kind, he's very giving. We laugh more than we argue. Our kids enjoy it because we're not bickering and yelling anymore. It's more or less like we just sit there and laugh. So our kids are laughing with us, and it's great.
Wow. Wow. Amazing, Brittany. So what about when he wants to go out with friends now, or like if he,
Go, go.
that's it? That's
Have a
you,
great time. Have a great time. Let me know when you're leaving and you're headed home, so that way I know that you'll make it. That you'll be there safely. Other than that, I love you. Have a great time. If you want to go out with family, same thing. I love you. I'll hold down our fort till you get back. So
wow. So did he, did his head explode the first time you said that, right? Because that wasn't the
yeah,
old.
he
Did he say,
did.
"Who are you? What have
When
you done with my life?"
yeah, he actually went out to a steakhouse with one of his friends, and it was a steakhouse that we had talked about that I had really wanted to go to with him. So when he had told me, he's like, he sounded very nervous, telling me that he wanted to go to this steakhouse. But I told him, I was like, whatever you think and whatever you want to do. I was like, it's fine with me. And he like kind of looked at me like, hold on, wait a second, what? I was like, go, like it's okay. I don't mind that you go. And he's like, no crying. No, I'm not going to cry. I'm not going to get upset. I love you very much. And I want you to have fun. I want you to enjoy your time.
So I want to know, I want to hear how you got there because I mean, when you were crying and you were saying that it was a kind of a manipulation before to get him to stay home. And honestly, when you have a 2-month-old baby and your husband is saying he's going to Vegas, like in some ways, like every woman, every mother right now is going, oh yeah,
Yeah.
2-month-old baby, like no,
Yeah.
don't go,
Yeah.
stay home, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
how did you get yourself from the part where you would feel it sounds like a lot of fear about him
It
going out
is.
without you.
Um, I always had a lot of fear of, I guess, and I still do. I can't even say that I don't because I still do have that fear and I still
Yeah.
do battle with it. But it's a fear of being left and a fear of being alone. Those are my two biggest fears that I have. But I got told by another friend of mine that, because I do believe in God, so that if God wants to take that person away, it doesn't matter how or when, that me being so caught up in having him here with me right now, and ruining the love and the intimacy that I could have after he went out is it's a big difference. I'd rather him go out and have the fun that he wanted to have and then come back and tell me all the great things that he did versus me yell and scream and him yell and scream at me about him having to stay home.
Yes.
Um, I still battle with it, and I battled with it the day that he told me he was going out to a steakhouse with his friend. But I didn't allow myself to show the manipulation part. I didn't allow myself to work up and cry like I used to. I didn't allow the emotion of worry or concern show on my face, rather than I trust you in my head. I trust you. And because I did that, he trusted that I trusted him, and he went.
And he lives up to your expectations now, I bet too, right? Because you're
He does.
showing him trust. Yeah.
He definitely does. But it's a great thing, because it's just we live together, but it's like we can have our own lives at the same time.
Yes. That is pretty amazing, Brittany, because I think
Thank you.
it's pretty common for women to struggle with feeling jealous. Would you describe it as jealousy that he was going out?
Big
Okay.
time. Oh
Yeah.
yeah, it was big time. And my husband called it the what was it? I'm sorry. Afraid to miss out of something.
Oh, FOMO.
That
Yeah.
Yeah, there
Right.
you go.
Fear,
Yeah.
fear of missing out.
Yep.
Yes.
That's me 100%. And I allowed those things to control me, and I allowed them to control my husband.
And that led you down this heartbreaking path that you have since made the breakdown before the breakthrough, which is
Yes,
really remarkable. So, and you also, so you described the old tears as manipulation, but you have also,
absolutely. My husband hates when I cry.
so tell us about that.
That is his number one thing, but it's because throughout the 6 years before the infidelity, when I cried, it was more or less to get my way, to get exactly what I wanted out of him, no matter what it was. So now when I cry, he doesn't hate it as much, because I don't cry as often, and I'm not crying about everything. I cry about the things that are vulnerable. Um, so this was before we even got back together. He was throwing stones at me. Like, he was
Mm.
calling me all kinds of lovely things. And this is actually when he found out about the infidelity. Um, so he was just calling me all kinds of things, and I had told him, ouch. And it was really the first time that I had ever used ouch with him. And he kind of looked at me very dumbfounded, like, he's like, I didn't hit you. I didn't lay hands on you. Why are you saying ouch to me? And I looked at him and I'm like, you hurt me. Like, what you said hurt me. He blew up even into this bigger thing. Instead of feeding into it or saying anything more, I told him, I'm going to walk away until you start being nice. I don't want to talk to you while you're being this rude. And he kind of looked at me like, whoa, normally you would like yell back at me and scream at me. And I didn't. I walked away. And we actually cooled down for a couple of hours. And when I came back, he we were actually able to talk. Like, we were able to talk through what happened, and I was able to tell him what happened. And he still ended up leaving, because he didn't want to be with me anymore at that time. So he still ended up leaving. But yeah, that was kind of my biggest moment with ouch, was when he was calling me names outside of my name that I'm not even sure I can say on the podcast.
Yeah, I hear you. And then
So
did he ever apologize for what he said?
he did, and that was the week after he had been gone. When he had texted me, or almost a week before we went and got him, and he had texted me this long message of, I'm very sorry. You didn't deserve none of that. I love you. I want to be with you. Um, I want our marriage, and stuff like that. So it was just, that was a huge moment that I was like, these skills actually work, and I should have started them in the beginning.
Wow. Well, it's pretty remarkable that you were able to reach for them. It is
Yeah.
human nature to want to just slam them back, and it sounds like that
Hmm.
was the old dance that you guys
Yeah.
had done, and that's what he was expecting from you. He even said,
Yeah.
like, "Come on, why aren't you doing the normal thing that you do?" But
Yeah.
instead, it sounds like you kept your dignity.
Yeah, I did. And it felt good. That was the thing. It felt good to be able to just go. And I mean, that's for any fight or any argument that I get into nowadays too, especially at work and stuff like that. It's not worth it. It's nothing at all is worth my peace, my inner peace. So I'm not going to argue with anybody. I'm going to walk away at that point. Or I will tell you ouch if you tell me something offensive. Like I'm not going to allow myself to go to that place that I was because I'm happy. I'm truly happy.
Brittany, that sounds like a superpower to me. I've had moments where I've been able to use the skills, like just
Yeah,
exactly what you're describing, and I get through it with my dignity, and I'm like, yeah, like that was
exactly. You feel so empowered and great. Like you just feel like I'm on top of the earth. Like nobody can beat me.
yes,
It's great.
it is great. It is great. So okay, so what is your relationship like now?
It's wonderful. My husband actually is, we're working on trying to get him disability right now because he has a bad back and he can't work. So I am the only one that works right now. But while I'm at work, I get all kinds of lovely messages all day long, which I didn't before, which is, you're amazing. Thank you so much for doing what you do for our family. I can't thank you enough. And then I text them back the same things all day long as well. I appreciate you being home taking care of our house. I appreciate you taking care of our kids. The appreciation just goes back and forth constantly the entire shift. And then once I come home, it doesn't stop. It's constant hugs, constant kisses. Come here and let me hold you. Let's watch this movie together. We even, because I didn't like video games. There was like no video game systems in our house. Well, I started liking it. So we got my own gaming system and we got me my own game and we actually play the same game together. And it is a great bonding experience. Like I absolutely love it. And he loves that I play with him. Like he's like, it's the best thing that my wife plays video games with me.
So this is like a physical symbol right in your house of
Yeah.
the new sheriff in town who
Yeah.
not only allows a gaming room, you actually play with him and sort
Yeah.
of allow that consider that sounds like his self-care and
Yeah,
yours
it
now
is.
too.
It is. I absolutely love it. I can't even say I don't. It's such an amazing game. Like it's Grand Theft Auto. So I mean it's pretty bad. But it is so much fun just to go around and be criminals because you can't be criminals in the real life.
No, there's consequences for that. So
Yeah.
it's like you're two like your inner children playing together. This I mean there's a reason
Right.
that's such a popular video game, right? So
Right. And
so I
it
love this.
is. It's great.
Okay, so what if a woman says to you like, okay, my husband, uh, he says he's done with me, he's having an affair, and I'm just heartbroken, and I don't know what to do. What is your tip for her to get to what you're describing, where there's this constant gratitude going between you, and sounds like a lot of playfulness, and you're enjoying each
Yeah.
other's company. So how can she get from where you were and she's maybe she's feeling jealous, a lot of jealousy too. Where should she start?
The two main things that I can say that kept me on track and they keep me on track. Um, Self care and the appreciation, telling him that I appreciate him multiple times a day. Those two things alone, I feel like brought him back. Those are the two things that he kind of saw. Okay, wait, maybe she isn't crazy. And maybe she just does, maybe she just needed some time to herself. It's just one of those things that I feel like as long as you focus on those things, and oh, that's another thing, stop focusing on his paper. Stop. Stop looking over at his page. Don't worry about anything that he can control. Trust him and trust yourself. That's it.
Amazing, beautiful. What do you think you would say to Brittany? Before the skills, like what do you know now that you'd want to tell her?
Get it together sooner. Just know that it's not worth it to get so worked up over the small things that the small things that you get worked up over that seem big to you at the time. They seem big. But to get worked up over them, you're ruining love and connection that you could be having with your spouse. It's just don't allow yourself to get worked up over those things. Enjoy what you have now because you won't have it forever. So enjoy what you have now and live and let live. That's it.
Yeah. Well, I think it's extraordinary. Like this must have taken just a tremendous amount of courage to implement these
Yeah.
skills. You had Carly and you had the book and you just kind of kept going back to the book, it sounds like, to remind
Yeah.
yourself.
I still read it. I still read it to this day. I have an entire notebook that is full of notes from your book because I constantly go back and refer. Or if I feel like I am falling off track or not doing enough self care, that's when I resort back to your book and I'm like, okay, where do I start? Here we go. And it truly does help. And then my husband knowing about the skills and knowing what I've been working on, he also helps. He's able to tell me, like, when I'm like, no, I don't want you doing that. He'll kind of look at me like, what? Wait, say that one more time. And I'll be like, okay, I'm sorry. Whatever you think. So it's kind of one of those things where he knows about the skills now. So he uses them towards me when I become not accountable anymore. Like I try controlling and I try, doing things that I did in the past. He's like, hold on, wait a second, let me hear that again one more time. And then
But
that's
it's
when I
so
kind of
cute.
realize, yeah.
That's adorable. So he's like playful about it. Like, what?
Yeah, he is.
And he has a totally different expectation of the reaction he's going to get from you now. He
He does.
expects that you're
The
going to be
positive.
respectful.
He expects me to be positive and respectful, which I usually always have been now.
Yes. Yes. And was any of this, did you learn any of this? I mean, did it feel natural to do any of this? Or did you see it model
No.
growing up? Okay. No.
Growing up, my mom actually did what I did to my dad. And I saw it growing up. So it was kind of like once I started reading your books and I started like seeing what I was doing wrong, it was kind of like a smack in the face. It was kind of like I did not like that growing up. Like I didn't like my mom yelling at my dad all the time. I didn't like my mom telling my dad that he couldn't do things. I didn't like that. And I told myself, as a kid, that I wouldn't do that if I got into a relationship. And lo and behold, I did. Um, so it was kind of like your book really was like a reality check for me. It was kind of like, wow, like I really, really didn't expect myself to be doing the controlling, the talking over him, talking for him, the just telling him what he was wearing was wrong or telling him that he couldn't go anywhere, that those things were demeaning to a man. I didn't think that, and to know that now, it's like I don't need to do that to make him feel like that because he wants to be with me because I'm happy. I'm easy to love. Our connection is great. Like I can joke with him. He can say silly things to me and we just go back and forth all day long. Like there'll be sometimes where like you might think that we're fighting, but we're not. We're over here joking and laughing because I have a smirk on my face and he has a smirk on his face, but we're not looking at each other. And then we turn around and we laugh. It's really like it's a great, great relationship. I'm so thankful that I fixed it and thankful that I stayed working on the skills.
It's really remarkable. You are extraordinary, Brittany. So, and how has this
Thank you.
impacted your kids?
Oh, big time. Our son at the time of our separation was 5. My husband actually told him that we were separating, that mom and dad were not going to be together anymore. My son was destroyed. He was completely destroyed. He cried all the time. Anytime I would leave the house, my son has never been the type to cry when we left. Anytime his dad or I would leave the house, he would cry to the point where he was like trying to like beg us to stay. And it was really bad. Our daughter was a little bit too young to kind of understand anything that was going on. It was just mom and dad weren't home as often as they used to be. that was kind of what she saw. But no, my son went through turmoil through it. But now I can say they're happy, they're thriving. My son listens a lot more now that I expect good things of him. Instead of yelling and bickering at him, I kind of use the whatever you think, or I make him understand that I trust him to do those good things. And 9 times out of 10, he does. He's 6, so you got to give him a little credit.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
But for the most part, he does pretty well.
Yeah, I love that you're using the skills with your little man too, your big man and your little man.
Me too.
Yeah. Well, this is it's incredibly inspiring. I just really appreciate the vulnerability of all that you shared with us today, Brittany, because you're not the only one. This is something that we don't get to hear the details of. Sometimes you just see a pretty picture of a family on Facebook and you don't really know exactly what's going on. And so it's just such a gift to have you describe what you experienced and how much power you have discovered that you have. You sound incredibly empowered.
I am, and I feel very empowered, and it's the greatest thing of a lifetime. I don't think I've felt any better in my entire life.
Wow. Well, amazing. Great job. Way to be a beacon of hope for what's possible, no matter what's happened in your marriage.
Well, no matter what it is.
Yeah, you can put your family back together again. You're here to say.
You can. So the number one question I would ask is, do I want this? Every time it was a yes. Every single time was a yes. So it was, why not fight for it?
And you did, and now you've got a beautiful family to put a real picture on Facebook of what's
Exactly.
Beautiful story. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing it today, Brittany.
Thank you, Laura. I appreciate it. Thank you so much for letting me come on.
If you're wondering how to get started with fixing your relationship and making it shiny again, then you need a roadmap. Get 6 simple steps to follow that will set your relationship up for success. Discover 3 common mistakes that wives make trying to fix their relationship that just make things worse when you download my free Adored Wife Roadmap. You can do that at getcherished.com. Go to getcherished.com now to get your roadmap in minutes. And now it's time for the Worst Relationship Advice of the Week award.
It's the worst relationship advice of the worst relationship advice. Yeah, it's the worst relationship advice of the worst relationship advice of the week.
And the advice I find most putrid this week comes from a student whose coworker told her, quote, "Some people just are not meant to be together, and you have to be okay with that." Pill. The student writes, "I was talking to a male coworker in December. He knows about my husband deciding on getting a divorce back in June, and he asked me how things were going now. I told him that I see so much good happening and being said between us, and that I'm trying my hardest, and I believe things will work out. And maybe what I said next was what caused him to reply the way he did. And that's my mistake then, because I told him that I'm still so scared and that I can't say for sure how it will go. But I'm really hoping our marriage will continue and be better than ever." He then said, "Some people just are not meant to be together, and you have to be okay with that too." My facial expression told him I got a little upset. And he continued, "You can't be childish about this and say, 'But I want.' It's just a fact you have to accept." And I just think that was unnecessary to even say, as he knows what I'm praying for. And having just told him I think our marriage is slowly healing, it felt a bit cruel to my heart. I know I shouldn't even take it in, but I did have a hard time getting his words out of my head for at least the next several days. And being down in the trenches here, doing my best and having all kinds of concerns, I know I really don't need to hear that kind of crap on top. Oh, no, you sure didn't need to hear that. I am so sorry to hear that this coworker was so negative and judgy to you. That is ignorant, cruel, and awful. The subtext here is that you should probably give up on your marriage because you're just in denial. And that that makes me want to jump up on a table and stare down at this coworker and scream, "How do you know that? How do you know?" And then stand with my arms akimbo and give him stink eye until he comes up with a good answer. And the only good answer would be, "I'm sorry, I just realized I'm completely wrong." I would accept that answer. It's so disappointing when someone insists on spewing such terrible, lousy advice and pretends it's a fact. As a mere mortal woman, of course, it would affect you for someone to be so authoritative and insistent that they know what's best for you, especially because you're being vulnerable, which means you feel fear, but you've decided that it's more important to become your best self and fix your marriage than it is to curl up into a ball and give up. And I admire you very much. And from what you were sharing with him about the good signs you see in your relationship, it sounds like you've been brave and committed and humble in seeking to change your side of the dance. You're improving your side. And that's not easy to do. But you're getting a better response from him. And that says a lot. It's one of the things I love best about our community. One of the things that binds us together here is that we stand for you as a woman, as a wife. We stand for your marriage. And that's across the board. That's coaches and, other students, everyone. And we have a point of view here. And it's that it's possible to choose love instead of fear and therefore create a loving family. And that this is a powerful way to make the world a better place by supporting and creating more happy families. I know it flies in the face of what you hear other places. People encourage you to give up. Give up and do what, though? Focus on your fear? The common message is that we should be afraid, be very afraid. But as you already know, love is an action word. It's a verb. It's a decision. It's a choice. And this student is choosing her faith over her fear. And I think the world needs more women like her. So a big shout out to the student who sent this to me. I like to keep things anonymous around here, but you know who you are, and I know who you are, and I'm cheering for you. For that reason, the advice that some people just are not meant to be together and you have to be okay with that is the very worst advice I've heard all week. Thanks for contributing to the podcast and for spotting this truly terrible advice. Listen and subscribe to the Empowered Wife podcast. Next week, we'll talk about 5 signs of an incredibly happy marriage. In the meantime, I hope you're having lots of fun. Today's fun fact is that the Empowered Wife podcast debuted 1 year ago, and already it's been downloaded over 386,000 times. So thank you for being a loyal listener. I'm so grateful for you.